Just doing a quick sound check here. So yeah, no, that sounds good. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well. This video is all about how to choose the right racing wheel and the right training wheel. Nowadays, there are so many different options out there, so many different wheels on the market. You know, it's pretty difficult to choose which wheel should you use for which conditions. Would the wheel work well for you or will it not work well for you? Should you go for something lighter or should you go for something heavier? Should you go for rim width really wide or should you go for a narrow rim width? There's lots of different things out there, lots of different options, and it gets pretty confusing, especially when you go to buy your first set of wheels. This video is sponsored by DT Swiss, the rim and wheel manufacturing company out of Switzerland. So I was lucky enough to visit head offices in Biel, Switzerland, and I got to see how the spokes are produced. Apparently yearly they go through 68,000 kilometers of steel wire to produce spokes for the companies, for the wheels and for the wheel sets, which is quite an astronomical amount of steel wire. Putting the spokes into the free hubs and into the rims. Quality control is extremely great. Also got to build a set of wheels at DT Swiss, which took quite a lot of time, but it was amazing to see how much love and attention goes into these wheels. Yeah, let's head straight on to the basics. When it comes to choosing a wheel, there are three main things you need to think about. Number one is, am I a tall person? Am I a short person? Am I slightly on the lighter side? Am I slightly on the heavier side? What type of riding do I do? Do I live in a hilly area? Do I live in a flat area? Is there a lot of wind where I ride? And yeah, the preference on how many years or how much experience you have cycling will also really impact what type of wheel you will choose. And also the bicycle. If you have an aeroframe bike, or if you have a normal traditional round tubed bike or a climbing bike, as people like to call them, these are the things that will impact or influence your wheel choice when it comes to buying a training wheel or comes to buying your race day racing wheel. Some basic information for people out there that don't know aerodynamics. Aerodynamics comes down to three parts mainly. It's the rider, which makes up 75% of the aerodynamic drag, which is the biggest part of it. So depending on how you ride on your bicycle, you're going to be either aerodynamic if you're sitting more bent over forwards. If you're sitting more upright, obviously you're going to be less aerodynamic. From there, then we have the bicycle itself, which is 25% of the drag, which is quite a large number. And then we obviously have the wheels. The wheels make up 8% of the total drag of a bicycle, so it is quite a big percentage. And the thing about the wheels as well, it's got rotational mass, so obviously the heavier the wheel is, the slower the rotation of the wheel will be. It depends on obviously the depth of the wheel too. So whether you've got a real shallow rim, which people use for climbing or training, you have then slightly deeper 50mm wheels people use for racing. Some people also use for training to get used to the wheels. And then you have the 65, 85mm wheels, as well as the disc wheels, which are mainly used for time trialing or triathlon specific bikes, which people use for racing in Kona and other different types of aerodynamic bikes, such as time trial bikes or triathlon bikes. Some people also race time trials on the road bikes with 65mm or 85mm wheels as well. So it's already specific to what type of riding that you are doing. So I think the one most important thing when it comes to choosing a specific wheel for you is the location, where you live. A lot of people, if you live in climates or you live in conditions where there's a lot of rolling hills in the area, or you have big mountain ranges in the area, and you only want to go for one set of wheels, I would then say opt for something slightly shallower, something that climbs better up the hills, and it's definitely better if there's crosswinds coming through the mountains. Something like a 35mm wheel to 40mm wheel would be the best for you. It's quite versatile. You can also use it in races as well. You might want to go for a second set of wheels further down the line if you do happen to travel. But in hilly areas, you want to go for a 35mm to 45mm wheels for climbing. Then again, if you live in a flatter area and there's less wind where you are, you could opt for something like a 50mm wheel for racing, as well as your training. So it really depends on where you live, how much expertise you have, how experienced you are on the bike, and your conditions where you ride. Because if you ride in places where it's got a lot of bad weather too, you don't want to be going with your nice race wheels out in the bad weather. You want to be going for something that can handle the weather and can handle more abuse in the long term as well. When it comes to my preference in wheels over the past couple of years, I'm racing short course triathlon, so it's more of a crit style racing. I have then offered for the shallower rims, so something like 35mm depth towards 50mm depth wheels. This is specific on, there's a lot of accelerations in the racing that we do. So a lot of the time I'm going to be choosing a slightly shallower wheel, depending on the course. If there's a lot of flat sections in the racing, I'll opt for a slightly deeper wheel, perhaps 50 to almost 65mm depth, depending on the course. As well as if it's very windy or not. If you're a heavier rider or somebody who's more experienced in riding, you're more capable of riding a deeper wheel in the crosswinds or in strong side winds. You've got better control of the bike, hence you're going to go for a slightly deeper wheel when it comes to racing. On the other side, when it comes to training, you want to go for a slightly shallower wheel. The wheel doesn't rotate as fast, it's better for training as well as sometimes going for aluminium wheels. Generally, while training, you'll see a lot of professionals as well going for shallower wheels during their training rides. Aluminium wheels, sometimes the slightly cheaper wheels or more affordable wheels for people out there. If you go and you bang the rim up, it's better than breaking a set of very expensive ARC 50mm wheels. So you definitely want to keep your race wheels for race day, and for training you want to go for something more affordable and a kind of an overall stronger rim, just for taking the hammering and the damage out there. If you're like Rachel Klammer, my wife, she's obviously a much lighter rider than I am. She's also been riding for many years, but she opts for a slightly shallower rim depth. She'll go for something kind of 35mm depth or 40mm depth is kind of her preference for racing and training. The crosswinds and things when she rides a shallower wheel also is more beneficial for her, so she can generally ride the same depth wheel for training and for racing. She might be able to go for a slightly deeper wheel for racing, but depending on the accelerations in World Triathlon Series racing, the shallower wheels definitely seems to work better for her, and she prefers that type of depth. Another big thing when choosing wheels on Aerodynamics is how wide the rim is, because tires are getting much wider nowadays, the frame, the forks are getting slightly wider, so everything is going on the wider side. And you definitely want to look at pairing your rim with a tire that suits, or a tire that you're used to. And I think 28s is becoming the norm nowadays on road bicycles. They'll probably head towards 30mm in the future, I assume. And yeah, things like disc brakes as well have also changed the way that rim manufacturers out there have been making wheels slightly differently now, as well as tubeless. So there's a lot of different reasons why manufacturers changing their rims over the past few years, but rims are definitely getting wider and starting to get slightly deeper and better in crosswinds. Back in the day, wheels in the crosswinds used to be much worse than they are today, and definitely the Q factor, the yaw factor of the wheels have become much better and much better in crosswind situations, as well as riding in pelotons, and accelerations of the wheels have become much better. Some wheels also come with ceramic bearings, which is, I think, the creme de la creme of wheels. So if you've got ceramic bearings in your wheels, then you're definitely have got a great set of wheels. They definitely last a lot longer. I find the ceramic bearings that I have in my bottom bracket too, they seem to last quite a bit longer than normal steel or cartridge bearings. And you definitely feel a slight difference between them and the training wheels when it comes to race day. Training wheels, on the other hand, slightly slower. The bearings are not as fast or not as smooth, so the bearings obviously will need to be replaced and need to be serviced probably a bit sooner than ceramic bearings are. And yeah, so it depends on which types of bearings you have, specific application that you're going with. So I hope this video helped you in choosing and making your mind up on which wheel set is best for you. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to smash that like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Cheers everyone, see you in the next video.